and I'm at the Greater Vancouver Zoo, where I'll be doing a review on accessibility features. And today I will be using my Access to Entertainment Pass. Come join me! Tickets, and one of them was free with the Access to Entertainment Pass. Please watch the entire video for my final review. First stop is the washrooms, and while they did have a disability washroom, the sign that was saying how to lock the door was above the toilet and not visible for someone who was blind. A braille sign would have been much better.
Not through the garden though, please. Let's stay on the pavement and go around.
So these roads are wheelchair accessible, but they also allow great contrast for people with low vision, which allows me even more independence. The rhinoceros pen, and I can see the title here, as well as the Latin word. But down here it becomes even more difficult because of the contrast, the size, and the text. It would have been so much easier if they had made a braille plaque for me to be able to read and make things more easy and accessible. Another option would be audible recordings or an app that you can connect to your phone when going to the zoo. Fortunate that the giraffe came to the gate because I could get a good look at him. I was very grateful for the contrast of the giraffe to their surroundings, especially when they came so close. These are such beautiful, majestic creatures, and one of my favorites. Now, as you see that I'm going down this ramp, I'm using a combination of tapping to find my whereabouts and also using my cane to trail along the side of it. This is a technique that I use when I'm not certain about the terrain, as this was rather difficult. Here we have a tortoise, which unfortunately was behind the glass, so I actually had to have the sighted person with me describe what it looked like. So this map is very visual, and it's not very clear as to what is where. So a tactile map or even raised shapes of the animals would have been more helpful. It's you! Oh, big girl! Big girl! Here we are with a brother and sister, lion and lioness. So we have Castle and Prim. And luckily for me, they're pale in color, and their contrast to the grass is great for me to be able to see. Look at this big, beautiful kitty cat standing out against her background, and she flops over. Bonding with a lioness. She's giving me slow blinks, which is a feline's way of saying they're comfortable and they love you. So the capybara, which looks like a big hamster, honestly, I struggled to see until he started to move into a better contrasted area. And here we are at the wallaby walkabout. This was where all the Australian animals were, and I found that the instructors were really helpful and supportive when it came to finding where I needed to go, and the pathway was really well lit. And here we have some red kangaroos. I wasn't able to see the wallabies, but these were pretty clear for me. One cool thing about kangaroos is they can't move their legs individually. They have to move them both at the same time. As you can see, these guys here are a great contrast for me. But one thing I'm loving about the zoo is being able to hear all the sounds that the animals make. So I heard the flamingos just now, and earlier we could hear the lions roaring and other animals' sounds that come out throughout the day, and it's just a really incredible experience for someone who can't quite see as much. Oh, what's up? Where are you going? You're beautiful too, but you're just not over here, so I'm ignoring you. What are you eating? You getting bugs? So we just saw the pelican, a very beautiful and majestic bird, And I'm noticing about the walkway here that I can put my cane in the ruts and follow where to go to get down the ramp to the main road. Except for here. It's a hip-hop anonymous that blends in well to his background, so I couldn't really see him. So people often think of grizzly bears as just these ferocious creatures. But as you can see behind me, they're just playing. They're just cubs. And as much as I can only make out small shapes because of their contrast and the size and distance, I can hear them playing in the water, splashing around and huffing. So that's even more of an experience for me as a visually impaired person. It's gonna be awesome. Are you guys playing? So as much as I couldn't see them playing in the water, luckily this bear decided to be a little poser. He climbed up and came close to the fence to check us out and to look beautiful. Alright, here we are at a picnic table. We decided that after the morning of walking and seeing a whole bunch of animals and other sights that we'd stop and have a quick bite and then regroup for the afternoon. Look, we got a charcuterie! It's great that they have rest stops and a food place for people who want to take a break throughout the park. And it looks like most places are wheelchair accessible, including this ramp. Unfortunately, a lot of the tables don't have an extendable lip for those who are in a wheelchair, which can cause accessibility issues. One thing to point out is that they did have accessible porta potties, so that was pretty awesome. So these beautiful bears are a wonderful contrast to their environment around them. They remind me of home because they are so frequent where I come from, but they are just so wonderful to look at up close. So this ramp up to the viewing spot for the big grizzly bear is actually really well marked on the right side by a beam that my cane can trail along. Now, I'm aware that there's nothing in front of me because I had somebody sighted with me, so I could trail along the beam and find my way up the ramp by myself. One thing I often struggle to see are birds, and these eagles are no exception. Luckily, I had someone to describe them to me. So whenever I'm encountering a new environment or a new room, if I have to find things on my own, my first priority is to find the perimeter and find any obstacles. So as you see here, I'm walking around the outside to know the limitations of my surroundings. Just finished looking at the bear lookout. We saw some eagles and it was pretty cool. And there's a great ramp for wheelchair accessibility going up to the lookout. However, coming back down, I noticed there's quite a drop off here and there's no railing. This is a safety hazard, not just for people who are blind, but for all users. I have the prehistoric exhibit. I didn't know dinosaurs were still real. Gotta go this way.
Yeah.
Because of the lighting, the T-Rex actually scared me. This is the Stegosaurus, and he is my favorite of all of the dinosaurs. Even though he's a herbivore, he's got plates on his back and spikes on his tail so that he can ward off predators. It's one of my favorite parts of this exhibit, the fact that the animals make noise and move so that I'm able to interact with them even more, as you just saw.
What is that?
Oh, let me see. Oh, dude, it's an egg and it's cracking open! Well, what do you say about our friend? Hatching. Oh! I love wolves. Now these trash bins and recycling bins might be accessible, but I'm not about to touch them. Now I'm certain that this little red panda looked absolutely adorable. Unfortunately, I really had a hard time even making out the silhouette. I could have spent all day watching these guys. They stick out from their environment so well for me, which makes me wonder where they were before. And as for Bambi, well, he was too far away for me to even see him. Because of my love of horses, I was really hoping to be able to see this guy. Luckily, I'm able to see him on the camera later on. The contrast and the shade, this zebra is blended in and camouflaged really well for me. Good job, zebra. Here we are back at civilization, and while these tables look really nice and have a great design, they're not wheelchair accessible. There's nowhere for a wheelchair to pull up. Because of the contrast of the white writing on the black background, I can see this menu, but I have to go this close to see it. I can see this because I have low vision, but people with no vision would have a very difficult time with this menu. After a long day of walking, we needed something to eat.
So, what were your 3 favorite animals that you saw at the zoo today?
I would have to say the giraffe, the lioness, and the flamingos. The giraffes because I was able to see them really well. The contrast was great. The lioness because she blinked at me, which is the sign that cats like you. And the flamingos are just so fascinating. They're such amazing creatures, and I just really enjoyed them. And the contrast was really good. And the dinosaur exhibit was pretty freaking amazing too. We've discovered the Discovery Center, and we're gonna go check it out because it seems to be accessible. Here, I'm not quite sure what animal it is, but you can touch it. These are animal paw prints, although it's hard to see what animal they are, but it's pretty cool to feel the indentations that the animals make. This is so cool. It's really interesting to see the size of the animal's head based on their skulls, because I couldn't normally see it.
That's how big a nipple's head is.
So at the Discovery Center, it was really cool to be able to touch and feel the different animal pelts and fur and feathers, as well as the size of the skulls, because I couldn't see them. So it's really interesting to have this feature at the zoo so that even those of us who cannot see the animals have a good idea of how big they are and what they actually look like. What is this? Tiger?
Yeah.
That's cool. I like being able to tell like the texture of the fur, right? Because like we can't pet the animals.
Yeah.
Just checking, no wheelchair accessibility here either. When I first heard the sound the peacock was making, I thought it was a very large bird. So when people were telling me, oh, the peacock's nearby, I kept looking up, expecting this 7 or 8 foot bird, and I was getting frustrated that I couldn't see it. And then this beautiful creature came into a better contrasted area, and I could see it for what it really was. These animals were roaming around the food area of the zoo, and they were just absolutely wonderful to see. A great end to a fun day. Well, that was a really fun day at the Greater Vancouver Zoo. I had a wonderful experience. And now we're going to get started on my final thoughts. Come join me. The first section that I'm going to talk about in this accessibility review is the entrance and navigation. So the first thing I noticed, because I'm low vision, was the Greater Vancouver Zoo sign. It was big and well contrasted, and because of my need for contrast, it was easy to see. Another thing that I really enjoyed were the walkways. Everything was paved and wheelchair accessible, but as I mentioned before in this video, that it was also easy for me to use as a cane user. I noticed a few things that could be improved upon for accessibility in regards to the entrance and navigation. One of these improvements involves the disability parking spots. I noticed that with the disability parking spot, there was no ramp up to the walkway that goes to the front entrance. So users would have to navigate through the parking lot and then go over a speed bump to get to the crosswalk. One way to improve upon this is to have a ramp leading up to the actual sidewalk that goes towards the crosswalk. Another thing that I noticed that could be improved upon is the payment location and the location where we swipe our tickets. So there was no indicator as to where to pay for my tickets, and something to improve upon that would be tactile flooring on the pavement that allows someone who is blind or visually impaired to know where to go. When it comes to paying for our tickets, we have to swipe the ticket at a certain place. There could be any kind of tactile indicator along that way to show us where to actually swipe our tickets, and that would be a big improvement. The next section I'm going to talk about is staff interaction, and I found that the staff at the concession stand were very supportive and helpful with me as a visually impaired person, as well as throughout the zoo. There's a spot called Wallaby Way where you can check out some Australian animals, and they were really helpful with what direction to go and where things were and how the environment looked. So they were really helpful in this situation. While I found the staff to be mostly pleasant, I think some more training on people with disabilities and how to interact with them would be really helpful. That way they would all understand how to connect and support somebody with a visual disability or others. Another suggestion that I would have is better communication skills via email. Before coming to the zoo, I did reach out to staff with some questions, and I still have not received anything back. This would be improved upon by having better communication skills so that people with disabilities could reach out and inform staff of their specific needs prior to visiting the Vancouver Zoo. The next section that I'm going to talk about is the animal exhibits, the main event, the main reason why we go. And so one of the positive things that I saw were that a lot of the animal exhibits were actually high contrast to their animals inside. Now, because I'm low vision, that worked out really well for me. This probably wouldn't be a positive thing for someone with no vision. And actually, some of the animals came right up to the fence. They must have known that I had a hard time seeing them. Another thing I really enjoyed about the animals themselves was being able to hear them all. We heard lions roaring, we heard the flamingos, whatever the sound they make is doing, and it was really enriching for me as someone who was blind to be able to hear what the animals were doing as well as see some of them. The next section I'm going to talk about is the facilities and the rest areas, and one thing I noticed that I really enjoyed was that they had a lot of rest areas throughout the zoo for people to stop and have a break and have a snack in the shade, especially after walking all day. However, one of the things that I did notice was that all of the rest areas and food locations did not have wheelchair accessible tables. This means that there was either nowhere for a wheelchair to pull up to the table, or the table was not extended long enough for someone in a wheelchair to actually participate in having a meal. So one thing I could suggest to improve upon this is to add tables that have accessibility for people with mobile devices. And one thing I really noticed almost right away was that the washrooms and the porta potties had accessibility options for people with mobility struggles. One thing I noticed was at the disability washroom at the front entrance, the sign to close and lock the door was in a very inconvenient place for people who are blind or visually impaired. It was inside above the toilet paper dispenser. I would have not have thought to put it there, and it was not in braille. So unfortunately, I used the facility without locking the door. Whoopsie! The next section I'm going to talk about are the sensory experiences at the Greater Vancouver Zoo. And the one thing I really enjoyed was the Discovery Center. Now inside there was all sorts of little exhibits where you could feel an animal's paw print, touch the fur, feel the size of an egg, the nest, the tooth, the skulls, all sorts of things that really gave me a hands-on experience to understand how big an animal really is or how sharp their teeth are. It was so amazing to have that experience so that I could get a better idea of what these animals looked like in real life. However, one thing that I noticed was that A lot of the items were not properly labeled and staff were not really informed as to what they were. So this could be an opportunity to have some more training as to what things are and how to interact with patrons as they come into the Discovery Center. Otherwise, I really enjoyed the Discovery Center. It was a great feature of the Greater Vancouver Zoo. To summarize, I had a really great time at the Greater Vancouver Zoo. It was a lot of fun and a lot of really cool experiences. I would definitely recommend it to anybody, but if somebody is blind or visually impaired, I would strongly recommend to take somebody sighted with you, as there are multiple barriers to experiencing the whole zoo on your own. I hope this has been helpful for you. If you'd like to see more content like this, or if you have a suggestion for my next review, please leave it in the comments down below. Please like, share, and subscribe, and as always, thanks for watching.